it's not showing up yet, but okay, it's coming on now.
I'm just,
We'll just give it a minute.
Okay. We're live.
Yeah, giving it a minute, giving people a minute to log.
Jeff, it's John Whitney.
Hey, John.
We're going to start our workshop, so just
Okay.
having you on the line with us here.
Yeah, hey, John.
Test,
Can,
test.
I sent you an email, actually, you probably didn't see, but can you call me at my landline number here? It'll be a much better call. It's signal.
Okay, what's the number?
It's 683-6754.
683-6754. All right.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yep.
Bye.
You can hear him fine on the video,
Good,
so we should be fine.
good test.
We haven't called the meeting to order actually yet, so.
Doesn't matter, it's still live.
Smile.
All right, Jeff, I got you on speakerphone. I'm going to call workshop number 11 to order. And note that all members of the town board are here. We also have department heads, key personnel with us. The public is not allowed to be at this meeting because of the state of emergency that was declared earlier this week on Monday. Reason we are gathering here this morning is that the governor has issued an order that all local governments, political subdivisions shall, effective March 17th, allow non-essential personnel as determined by local government to be able to work from home or take leave without charging accruals, except for those personnel essential to the locality's response to the COVID-19 emergency. Such non-essential personnel shall total no less than 50% of the total number of employees across the entire workforce of such local government or political subdivision. So that being said, we're just asking that you guys look internally at your staff and see who we're going to have to cut 50%, bottom line. So it doesn't say that they have 50% of the employees that are non-essential. It just says, 50% of the total staff. Is there anything else in that, Jeff, that you need?
Just a couple observations. You know, you're correct. It's 50%, at least 50% rather, of the entire workforce. So you don't have to do it department by department. It doesn't have to be the same people every day. And in calculating the 50% number, you can include, in my view, your entire workforce, as the order says, which means it's not limited to just 50% of your full-time people. You can also add to that any part-time or seasonal employees that you currently have working for the town. I think arguably you could include, you know, board members in that to the extent that they receive pay. I think anybody who's on payroll can be, you know, included in the base that you then apply the 50% number against. And, you know, that would be useful. Obviously, the bigger the base, the more number of people, including full-time people, you can have report every day. And it's clear that determination is solely yours to make, so there's no obligation to bargain any of this with any of your unions to the extent it impacts their employees. If you want to, you know, rotate or alternate people coming to work and staying home, you can do that. If you want it to be the same people every day, you can do that. I think the other important aspect of this is that it's clear in terms of the way that New York State has implemented this same requirement for state employees, which is really what Cuomo then extended to local governments through his executive order. You know, this is not a vacation for those employees who are told that they are not to report to work. They have to be ready and able to report if they're called. So, essentially this is like an on-call status for those employees who are told that they are not to report to work on one or more days, which allows you to then respond to unexpected issues that may arise even during the course of a workday.
Okay, how are the...
Final issue.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. The final issue that has come up, or question that has come up is, so does this mean that, they're on paid status if they're told not to report to work? I believe that's what was intended. The executive order doesn't come out and say it, but it does make reference, as you read, to the fact that for the employees that are told not to report to work, you can either require them to perform work at home if that's practicable and meaningful, or they are home without any charge to their leave accruals. call, which from a wage and hour perspective would almost certainly require them to be on paid status for that entire time anyway. I can't imagine, taking that the governor would accept that, the people that are told not to come to work would be unpaid.
Okay, and I also understand that police are not included in that. For instance, we have several officers that work for the town of Grand Island, but they're not on a daily basis. So, but I can't count them towards the 50%.
I have not heard that or seen that.
I'll forward it to you.
Yeah, if that's something that's been issued by the state to clarify, I haven't seen that. Because that issue came up right away when the order was issued, and at least the initial signals from the state were that police are included. And that's why
good.
the whole essential versus non-essential labeling exercise is really somewhat silly. I mean, the point is, no matter how many people you label as essential, you have to have at least 50% of your workforce not reporting to work on every day.
Okay. Mike?
So this is Mike Madigan. We're supposed to identify ourselves for transcript. It almost sounds like, from what I'm hearing, that from the president in his press conference, he's indicating that send folks home from work and that the federal government will make it whole and don't charge vacation or sick time. Is that what you're hearing, Jeff, or have you got any direction on that?
No, I think the expectation is that there will be some funding that will flow from the federal government that can help to offset some of the cost of all this. But, at this point, the direct legal obligation you have is the one that is established by Cuomo's executive order. And again, I think his executive order contemplates that people remain on paid status no matter what, whether they report to work, obviously, whether they're home and you tell them to do work from home, or whether they're home doing nothing but remaining essentially on call in case something arises that requires them to report to work.
Okay. Anything else?
That answered my question. He had so many double negatives on there, I wasn't sure if he was sick. So Mike helped clarify.
Can we have him elaborate a little bit on it? This is Jen Bainey. Elaborate a little bit on a scenario where we had a rotational workforce for positions that were,
They do count.
We can do whatever we want.
I read that wrong.
they would count in our numbers.
Yes.
So even though they'd be coming in 50% of the time, to try to make it more equitable, they'd be in our numbers, not as a half.
They're
Okay.
essential, and.
I
I get it.
come in.
Okay.
This is Tom DeGatti. I think all we need is each day to have 50% of the people here. Who those
Right.
50% are each day doesn't matter. It
And it's
can be
not
different.
it's not just this building, it's 50% of our townwide force. So
Right.
Pam Barton is going to speak, and she has a list of people for us. I know that she's going to, we'll talk afterwards.
Yeah, I think we really need to.
Can you speak closer to the microphone, please?
I think we need to talk in some kind of executive session first. I came up with a couple of different schedule scenarios. You have programs you've discontinued with
Right.
part-time workers. They can be part of the count. If town board isn't coming into this building, there's 4 right there. So I've got a couple of different scenarios where you have people rotating through, being off 2 days, the schedule repeats, but it requires a little more scrutiny than what
Okay.
can be done in this forum.
Yeah, I do like the idea of rotating where possible, so that we
Right.
distribute it as much as.
Right,
we
exactly, because it's not fair to the people that are working.
can.
To the extent we're going to put a schedule together at this
And
point,
and it doesn't require half of the people being home, because when you're eliminating programs with part-time workers, we should frankly lay them off and allow them to collect unemployment.
Wait, that's not what the governor's order says.
Part-time workers don't have accruals,
Oh.
they don't get paid.
Right.
They're-
Well, they count in the
but
workforce,
if,
though.
yeah,
I
if we lay them
understand,
off, we have
but
to
if you
then
lay them
take
off,
more
they
people.
they'll collect unemployment.
But if we lay them off, then we need to take more full-time people out to make up for the percentage. Yes, we do. It's 50%. For every person we take off the payroll, we will need to take more people off here because we're growing. 50% becomes,
Plus, the other issue is it would take 2 weeks, and I really think it's not going to do that much harm to the town government if we're paying them what we were budgeted for already.
But so are you gonna have the people come in to run programs and no programs?
No, we're gonna have them
No.
lean into other things. We
There's-
are under a directive from the governor to have these
We,
people.
we can find projects for sure. I'm confident we can
Well,
find.
they're going to be sent home.
You're talking about a dozen
Regardless.
crossing guards. What are they going to
Oh,
do?
yeah,
Paint
crossing
stripes?
guards, Right. yeah.
I, like, again,
Well, they count against the total.
right.
For our
And if they don't have
50%.
work, they can file for unemployment. So, anyway.
No,
But if we take those 12
that's-
crossing guards off, we're
If
gonna
you
have
take,
to
if you
make
lay them
those
off, then they're not part of the workforce.
Yes,
You
we-
don't.
Pam, yes, we will.
Jeff, could you opine on that?
Yeah, that issue is not really answered. In other words, you know, if you were to engage in layoffs under the usual standards that apply to layoffs, you know, does that then shrink your workforce and shrink the number of employees who are now entitled to be sent home with pay? That's not really answered by the executive order at all.
They would no longer be
So the issue of
employees.
part-timers is, you know, to my mind, it's clear they can be included. Your current part-timers can be included in the overall base against which you apply the 50% number. And most municipalities have seen it to be favorable to do that because what they really want are the full-time, you know, to be able to have as many full-timers reporting as they possibly can. But to the extent you tell part-timers then that you include it as part of your entire workforce calculation to stay home, you know, it seems if you're including them as part of your entire workforce, then they have an entitlement to remain on paid status for whatever the regularly scheduled hours would have been. The order does not at all talk about what happens if you have intervening layoffs under the usual rules that apply to layoffs. That's just simply not answered. You could potentially get a claim from anybody laid off that they should be included in the coverage of the executive order and remain at home. The executive order doesn't either specifically allow for layoffs, but it does not specifically preclude layoffs either.
Mike Madigan's going to speak.
My opinion, I think, it's no one's fault that this is occurring. I really think that we should continue to pay, even if folks are going home. I think that's really a standard that's being followed in many places, and I would really think that that's probably the standard we should follow. And hope that the federal government provides some compensation for it. It's been suggested that that's probably what's going to happen. I think we need to just make sure that we track everything closely and go with that. And I recognize it's taxpayers' money. However, I do think that these are individuals as well that are counting on these paychecks.
And Jeff, I'm looking at the executive order, and it says, non-essential personnel. Personnel are people who are under the employ of the town. If they're no longer under the employ, it's a pretty easy argument to say they no longer count towards the 50%, so.
That's Tom DeGotti. Jen
Yeah,
Brown.
that's an argument. You know, again, that's not addressed specifically by the order or anything else that I've seen associated with the order in terms of clarifying whether or not, you know, you're required to take a snapshot of your workforce at the time the order was issued, and that then becomes the identification of the employees who are covered by the order that you both do your 50% calculation against, and also that, you know, establishes the right to be paid if any of those individuals who are employed as of yesterday are told not to report to work. It's just simply not answered.
Jen Baney.
Just one thing I want us to be mindful of, I think a opportunity to return to executive session with Pam is warranted. Since we have our department heads here, I do want to hear from those ones who want to speak, as each of their departments are unique, and many of them may have things they want us to be mindful of before we start to make these decisions. They're here, so at some point before we go into any executive session, I want them to each be able to inform us of unique situations, things unique to their department that we may be missing, that we may need to know, because I don't want us to decide anything and then realize we could have done things more wisely afterwards.
Very good. So we'll open it up to the department heads if you have anything you'd like to
I
discuss.
would just suggest, though, that during the executive session, the department heads stay,
Be
because I
present.
do think that we want them to represent each one of their departments and give the best suggestion going forward.
And I'm inclined, to the extent we're going to do a schedule or rotation of some sort, to look to the department heads to be the ones to set that up. I mean, water and wastewater are obviously going to be different. We need them, they're essential personnel, but the rest of the guys, if we're going to do that, we can rely on them to help get us to 50%. They know their departments better than we ever could.
So this is Pete Marston. There's one other perspective that we need to keep mindful of. The fact that we're only going to have 50% of the people in is, to be honest with you, in case somebody tests positive who's working. So you can take 50% of your workforce, send them home, quarantine them, and bring in the other 50% who are not testing positive. So it's kind of, you're also covering yourself here, so you just need to be mindful and not just send, I guess, all your less critical people home. You need to split it up a little bit, because if we have to rotate the, I guess, the staff, so to speak, you want certain continuity as far as leadership and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So keep that mindful.
Well, and almost to the extent the staff are there, maybe you're right. If we're going to do a rotation, everybody who works Monday, Wednesday is working together so that if something does happen, we're not, the same person who may have caught the contagion then works with both sets, and now
Correct.
everybody's in trouble.
Correct.
So,
And Pete's point is important too. The more spread we keep with people, the less likely that more and more of our workforce might be taken out of commission for contamination.
There's currently 20 cases in Erie County now. It's jumping rapidly.
Dick Crawford, Highway Superintendent, taking into every point that was just made this morning. We did that. We broke our crews down into 2 crews, having essential employees or those that have MEOs that can do specific tasks. I've got them split up. So we would do the 3 days, 2 days, and rotate that through. With them knowing that they are, if they're off that day, they are on call. They could be called into work. We could get a major blizzard that would come in. So we've already gone through a lot of this scenario with our guys, and we're
Good.
take the direction of the town board and go from there.
Thank you, Dick.
Just one quick question, this is Mike Madigan. Have we resolved whether there's any union concerns with all this?
There are none.
No.
Executive order.
Yes.
Executive order,
emergency.
state of emergency removes all that.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other department heads wish to get up and speak with us before we conclude? Bob Westfall's going to
Oh, do
approach.
you see the recording device?
All right, the question I have for the board and looking at this is, one thing to look at your calculation of density. We have people that are out in the field. So if the idea was trying to drop density at town hall, trying to drop density.
No, it's
interactions.
50% of the
Okay,
workforce
and
in
that's-
total.
Okay, just because, we do have people performing field duties.
Right, I understand.
That will
Yeah.
still be required to do this.
Right,
but that comes into the essential versus
essential
non-essential
version,
employees.
correct.
right.
Well, there's a different classification, because we're going to stretch some boundaries, yeah.
Pam Barton, the directive yesterday changed his definition of essential to the reaction or the whatever of COVID-19. It wasn't essential to the function of your entity. And Jeff can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I read it. Essential
I'm
to
agreeing.
battling COVID-19 or. I
Right.
don't know.
However, the bottom line is, it's still 50% of our
No, I'm
workforce.
just saying.
I mean, we have to keep the town running. We have a water plant, a wastewater plant.
You
And
can't
until
say
he
that
puts it in
Bob's
writing.
essential because he's town engineer. It's essential to COVID-19.
Right,
It
Right.
took away essentialness to your
Only if it's
entity.
in writing,
Yes.
I can tell you that, and it hasn't been yet, so.
It was in yesterday's.
it is. It does say it
Does
right
it have
there.
another order?
There was
Well,
one,
it
yes,
came out
that-
on
that's what I read
the
this
16th.
morning.
Says essential to the
Yes.
whatever verb of COVID-19, not the town of Grand Island.
Exactly. It says, it says, except those personnel essential to the locality's response to COVID-19 emergency.
Yes.
Which would be like.
So
the
they're not
Department
in the
of-
calculation.
Right. The Department of Health, for instance, probably will not be cutting any personnel.
Right,
So that'd be an example where 50% wouldn't apply. I think that's why, the intent of
Right.
that.
Our response isn't for COVID-19, our response is a water break or a.
I
No,
understand.
is that worded to say you can go above 50%? in
You-
that-
It has to be at least 50%.
Yeah. Well, what
Yeah,
I'm,
and that's why I say the labeling exercise is, somewhat curious, given the final portion of that paragraph of the order, which mandates that it be no matter what you actually think of whether an employee is essential or not, the fact is you have to consider at least 50% of your workforce to be non-essential.
And this was supposed to take place effective March 17th. Today's March 18th.
Yeah, effective yesterday.
Right.
I'll just mention one other aspect of the order I didn't cover initially that at least some have, considered whether or not to make use of it. What the order actually says is that you have to allow non-essential personnel to be able to work from home or take leave. work, then that could put you in a position where you have more than half your workforce reporting to work on a particular day.
Yeah, I don't think we would consider that. I think the intent is to stop the spread, so we need to be at or below 50%,
Yeah,
regardless
there's no
of,
question about that. I mean, if you look at the intent, that's exactly it. I didn't want to, not give you a complete picture though of what some of the
got it.
open issues are with regard to the terms of the executive order.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on this from anyone? Tom Dwork's approaching.
Tom Dwork, Parks Crew Chief. I have a question. This morning, we've gotten a few emails about opening up pickleball courts, tennis courts, and everything else because everybody's off. I just wanted the board to be aware of it. I know we're trying to self-contain, so I just wanted to bring it up to see how we want to handle that.
Jeff, this is not an actual recreation program which we have canceled. This is just a recreation, I guess you'd say, facility. An outdoor pickleball court.
I would open it.
As long as they follow the guidelines of, which is currently groups of 10 or less.
I mean, Cuomo's
I have no
waived
concerns.
all the fees for the parks
Yeah, I
and is
would-
trying to
I
encourage
would-
people.
So
I would
open
say
those
the
up.
more outdoor, spread out activities, the better. Yep.
10
Should
or
we
less.
put anything on the website referencing smaller groups or anything like that?
I think we just say maximum, facility limited to maximum of 10 people and
And
put a
maybe
sign on the
post?
gate.
Okay.
And ask people to obey the standards that have been in place by the
And that
CDC
being
and
10,
everybody else.
right?
10.
Well,
10.
and
Well,
keep-
10,
keep
6 feet
tracking
away
it.
from each other.
Keep tracking it
Okay.
if it changes and update the signage and online if you need to accordingly, because
Okay.
it could change very soon.
Okay.
Does that sound suitable, Jeff?
You don't have,
Yeah, I couldn't quite follow the entire conversation. It sounded like the question is you have an outdoor facility and you're trying to decide what
Right.
standards you
It's
want.
basically like a tennis court. It's called pickleball.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anybody watched the press conference yesterday afternoon, the Trump's press conference, but Dr. Fauci, the medical guy that's been kind of the lead for the administration, he recognized, the different guidance, the 10 versus 25, 10 being, what some have said needs to be the standard, 25, others have said is the standard. He kind of minimized the difference between those two. He said that's not something you get hung up on. He said the important thing is just to be sensitive to limiting, as much as possible people congregating. But certainly if you wanted to adopt 10, as being the more cautious approach, you're certainly able to do that under the circumstances.
Yeah, it's not that big of a facility.
no, and the nature of those activities keep you away from each other.
Separated.
So,
Yeah, so I don't think monitoring is really required. I would just,
I would just put something saying, please, please stay 6 feet apart and
Because
abide
that's
by.
two locations we have to deal with.
Right.
Havenwood and Kagavine. If we're gonna open anything up, that'd be the two locations.
We don't have a hockey,
I would just,
There's, at Havenwood, there's
are
street
there
hockey.
nets there?
operations
Are they there
as
now?
usual there is
Yeah.
my advice.
Those I
No-
would
No
maybe-
change.
Pull back.
Those I would pull because those, you're playing hockey, you're on top of each other, tennis, pickleball, you're keeping a distance.
Yeah,
That-
I would
Those types
agree.
of sports, not so
Yes,
much.
Okay,
but-
but the pickleball and tennis,
Right.
good, okay, thanks.
so
Thank you, Tom.
to our directive, which, I don't know, the days blend together, I think it was last Friday. This is Pete Marston, by the way. We suspended all uses of recreational facilities at the town of Grand Island. So that being said, this may fly into that, and we should really look at that if we're going to say you can play pickleball and be a little more descriptive.
Yeah, we weren't thinking of outdoor facilities at the time when we,
So I guess we
We
maybe
did
have
that.
to go back and redefine that a little
We
bit.
just say all
I mean,
buildings are closed.
We do
This
programming?
is Mike Madigan?
Yeah.
It was
Sorry.
programming,
Yes.
not.
Programming and facilities.
And facilities.
Okay.
Correct. So what we just did is kind of against what we wrote originally.
but that we just put on the website.
We
Okay.
can change that.
That
I don't-
wasn't, that's not part of the
that's-
executive order?
That's my point.
Couldn't if we only did programming. Thanks, Jen.
I mean, the reality is,
Think so?
people are stuck at home, they gotta, I think if it's a safe activity, we should allow it to occur. Otherwise, people are gonna go bananas.
Dick Crawford, Highway Superintendent. I have a request yesterday, and a resident coming in today that wants to go around with a small amount of kids and pick up litter. And so I'm meeting with her at between 10:30 and 11, and I will have her, I'll give her this same thing. If you're going into they want to go to businesses where there's a lot of litter, like at Tim Hortons and stuff like that. I'm going to give them pickers that, through the recreation department, and some trash bags, and they're going to go around picking up litter.
Keep it below 10,
And
probably.
keep your distance and
Yep.
stress the
Right.
distance.
Are there any liabilities associated with that we have to be aware of, Jeff?
No, the conversation will be that they will
John,
not
you
be.
could restate the essence of the question. I just was not able to follow. I couldn't really hear.
There is a private individual that would like to bring some out-of-school children to locations on Grand Island where there's a lot of litter and pick up litter. We're going to provide the pickers and the litter bags and vests. So is there any liability that,
What program is this through?
I think it's just a private individual doing this to try and occupy the time of some of these kids that are out of school.
Kids are out of school?
Yeah.
I think that if you find that to be useful and if you see a good purpose behind it in terms of, keeping the kids focused on doing something productive while they're out of school, I don't think it raises necessarily any undue liability concerns. I do think that it'd be useful to have a document that their parents would sign, just acknowledging that, that they're performing the service on a volunteer basis, and that, the parents understand the town, cannot make any, representations as to whether or not by engaging in the activity that, it exposes them potentially to the COVID-19 virus. I think that, that to me is the critical aspect of it. If you're going to have them doing services that benefit the town or through the town, then, you're still going to have the PESH obligations to provide a safe environment and so forth, and you're assuming some level of risk. I'd also check with your insurance carrier just from a general liability perspective to make sure that if they were to engage in that type of activity, that if there any claims arise, they'd be covered.
Okay.
So this
Thank
is
you.
Mike Madigan, and I want to ask Jeff, if it's going to be a town activity, I'd probably shy away from it. If it's just a private individual, we're giving them a couple of things to make it a little more safer. But the minute we start signing documents, I think it's turning into like a rec program. And then I think it's accepting some risk that probably we shouldn't accept as a town in terms of what if someone does have COVID or whatever. I just think that we should probably shy away from that at this point.
So for what I'm hearing, because
Do I understand the question, or the issue to be that they'd be doing this on town property?
No, it's probably on private property.
Yeah, if the town's organizing it and we're having them sign a document, if it's a private individual doing something on their own, probably not too big of a concern if they want to borrow a little bit of equipment. But if it becomes a town program, I probably would shy away from it at this point.
I think I would take,
And again, of course, even if you provide them with equipment, if something does happen, they could argue the town somehow was facilitating
Right.
or sponsoring or.
Yeah, we'll
at least
check with the
that
insurance
the
carrier.
activities, but I think you're right. If it's really just providing a volunteer organization or a group of volunteers with some equipment or materials that isn't currently needed by the town, that's different than saying, okay, we're going to organize it, we're going to tell you where to do it, et cetera, et cetera.
So what do we think? Do we say yes or no, or what?
Well, I think they're talking about, like you said,
With your insurance carrier on it.
yeah, right.
yeah, I would agree with that. Check with the insurance carrier. I was going to have her sign the document that we use for our Adopt a Highway program where they do litter. This was not on town property, it was on private, but it may come back where the insurance carrier says, no, you are sponsoring it by giving them bags and pickers. So it may be best just to tell her that she can do it on her own, leave the bags and we can pick those up. But
Right, okay.
but I guess we could check with the insurance just to make sure,
Yeah.
but I'm leaning towards.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any further comments from any of the department heads? Okay, in that case, we'll entertain a motion to,
Hey, I got one more thing before we go into executive. I've had people approach about removing the parking restrictions because people are now home unexpectedly. I spoke with Dick a little bit. His suggestion is more or less, let's not pull the ban. Let's just tell people. We aren't going to enforce it unless it happens to snow. And if it does snow, get your vehicles off the street, otherwise feel free. So I figured I'd take that to you guys, we can talk about it, and then.
I mean, if we're gonna not enforce it, we may as well remove it.
But if we don't enforce it, and we tell people we're not gonna enforce unless it snows, if something does happen.
We're asking people to break a law. I don't know. I think we should pull the van.
I think,
Yeah.
personally, I think we should pull it and reinstate it if we see snow in the
Right.
forecast.
All right, and I
Well,
mean,
the next
given.
10 days, it's 50 degrees for a low.
And Dick
for
can
a
do
high.
that, Dick can do that as highway superintendent, since he's the one who institutes it anyways.
Dick, you have a long-term practice of not altering the,
In full disclosure,
So-
Dick, I told everybody that. I said, this is something we do not do. Obviously, this is uncharted territory, but
Dick Crawford, Highway Superintendent. I would agree that this is uncharted water. Everybody is at home. In the event that we do get snow, we would ask people to use common sense, and please get your cars in your driveways to allow the plow drivers to safely plow or salt the roads. Because whether it's going to snow or there's going to be an ice storm, we would ask that all roads be, or all cars be put in the driveways and taken off. If the
Inclement
town board
weather.
desires to lift the ban, you do have that right to request that that be done. And
Don't you institute that?
I do, but we're on uncharted waters right now.
Right,
There's an
right.
there's a
Emergency,
state of
emergency.
So I'm,
Right.
with your guidance and the guidance of all the town, you can direct me to lift that.
in the past you haven't?
We have
And
not.
you've been glad you haven't?
We have not. And we've worked very closely always with the town police and the sheriffs, and they have worked well of not going out and
So I'd like to
ticketing.
make a motion.
I just want to hear quick what Dick's preference is on it. What would you prefer that we do as highway superintendent? You want to lift it?
Well, it's, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Right.
And I don't know how many people have called. I think that because of the relationship that the town police are the main force that writes any tickets, if we talk with them, they're not going to be out there writing tickets on the directive of the town board, so, and/or the highway superintendent. So I would prefer that it just be left. And the understanding is with our residents that if there is snow, please get your vehicles off. But in the same vein, I don't think that we'll be seeing our town police or the sheriffs out there writing tickets anyways.
So you'd prefer that we leave the ban in place?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. And I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session for attorney-client privilege discussion.
So moved.
Motion by Marston
in personnel.
and personnel matters. Thank you. Second by Mike Madigan.
We just shut this off and stay here.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just shut this
That,
off.
any opposed? That motion carries. We're going into executive session.